In the previous video, we saw how to write our first code in Java. It was pretty basic to say the least, printing out some text on the screen, but it was a good place to start. In this video, I want to talk about variables and keywords. A keyword is any one of a number of reserved words that have a predefined meaning in the Java language. In Java syntax, all code is case sensitive, and this includes keywords. As we'll see soon, an int, all in lowercase, is not the same as int with a capital I. Here, an int, all in lowercase, is a keyword in Java. Let's take a quick look at all the Java keywords. On the screen we can see a complete list of the Java keywords, and if you look closely, a brief explanation for some of their current statuses. I have highlighted several, including int, which we just mentioned, and actually is short for integer. All of these highlighted keywords are what is known as primitive data types. We'll be looking much more closely at these data types and all the other keywords in upcoming lectures. For now, I really just wanted you to have a chance to see all the keywords and get a preview of some of the ones that we will be reviewing in the next few lectures. So that's a bit more about keywords, which we'll continue to learn more about throughout the course. But if we want to start getting the computer to do something useful, we need to start using variables. So what are variables? Well, variables are a way to store information in our computer. Variables that we define in a program can be accessed by a name we give them, and the computer does the hard work of figuring out where they get stored in the computer's random access memory, or RAM. Now, a variable, as the name suggests, can be changed. In other words, its contents are variable. So what we have to do is tell the computer what type of information we want to store in the variable, and then give the variable a name. There are lots of different types of data that we can define for our variables, some of which we've shown you in the keyword list previously. Collectively, these are known as data types. As you may have guessed, some data types, which are called primitive data types, are keywords in Java. When we get to the object-oriented features of Java, we'll learn that we have a lot of flexibility for creating our own data types, but in the next couple of videos, we'll explore primitive, or a special kind, of built-in data type. So let's start out by defining a variable of type int being an abbreviation for integer, which is a whole number. That's a number without any decimal points. To define a variable, we need to specify the data type, then give our variable a name, and optionally add an expression to initialize the variable with a value. And we'll be talking about expressions shortly. For now though, let's swing back to JShell to see how to define our first variable. Int my first number equals 5 semicolon. Note that I've capitalized the word first and the word number. Later in the course, I'll explain why I'm doing that. I also put a semicolon on the end of that line to complete the statement. So here, we've defined our first variable by specifying a data type of int and giving the variable the name of my first number. We've set the value to the number 5 using an equals sign. This is called an assignment operator. Remember that the data type int represents an integer value, which is a whole number. And finally, we added that semicolon to end the line to form a statement. The semicolon ends the line and tells Java just that the line is complete. So this entire line, as we've talked about, is a statement. We briefly discussed statements in the previous slide, describing a statement as a complete command to be executed. Here, this statement is a specific type of statement, a declaration statement. A declaration statement is used to define a variable by indicating the data type and the name, then optionally to set the variable to a value. So here, the type of the variable, note that type is a shortcut for the word data type, is an int. The name of this variable is my first number, and the value we're assigning or initializing our new variable to is 5. We can see this value assignment on the line of output from JShell. So rephrasing this for clarity, we're declaring a variable of type int with the name my first number and assigning it the value of 5. Assigning a value in this statement, or initialization, is optional here. In other words, we could have omitted the equals 5. With Java, in general, variables have to be initialized before being used, but we'll talk more about that in an upcoming video. If you're initializing a variable in the declaration statement, what you type to the right of the equals sign is assigned as the value of the variable. This is known, the part of the statement that follows the equals sign, as an expression in Java. And we will be using expressions a lot as we go through the course. So what is an expression? An expression is a coding construct that evaluates to a single value. And we won't go into a deep discussion of that now because we've got upcoming videos where we'll talk about that in a lot more detail. Now we can see in the output that Java has read this statement we've created and executed it. What's happened behind the scenes is that Java has allocated a place in memory to store a single whole number and set up a mechanism to allow us to access that memory location by the name we gave it, in this case, my first number. That's how we'll access it. So in other words, you don't need to know anything about where in memory this is taking place or where Java is storing the contents. To access the number, you don't refer to a memory location, you refer to a variable name, my first number in this case. So we're leaving Java to do all the dirty work. Alright, so now that we've declared the variable, let's see if we can print out the value. So looking at the declaration statement, I think we've got a good idea of what the output value should be. Let's take a look at a challenge now. So the challenge is to look at creating a new system.out.print below the declaration for my first number and see if you can figure out how to print out the value of the my first number variable. So pause the video here and have a think about it, then try to print out the value that we've assigned to our variable. Resume the video when you're ready to see how I do it. Alright, let's walk through it together and discuss how to print the number 5 out using our variable. So you may have thought when you first started that the following code would give you the result we wanted. System.out.print, opening parentheses, double quotes, my first number, closing parentheses, semicolon. This is similar to what we did in the Hello World video. As you can see, we in fact get the output my first number as text and not the contents of our variable that we declared, which of course should be 5. The reason we've got my first number printing out and not the contents of our variable is because we put the text my first number in double quotes. And when we put something in double quotes, it's called a string literal. We talked very briefly about this in the Hello World video. Remember that a string literal has to be included in a set of double quotes. Now a literal, unlike a variable, cannot be changed. A literal is the simplest form of an expression and not a variable. So here, what we're saying is, literally, no pun intended, print out the text, my first number. And unsurprisingly, perhaps, since those were the instructions we inadvertently gave, we can see my first number being printed. So in essence, that's why we're getting that value. If we remove the double quotes, which I'll do right now, I'll edit that line to remove the double quotes before and after my first number. So we need to remove both double quote characters to remove any errors. Recall from the Hello World video that double quotes should be used as a set to describe a string literal with a beginning double quote character and an ending double quote character enclosing the text. We'll execute this again without double quotes. This time we should see the right value. And we can see the value 5 shown on the screen. I made sure that I typed the name identically to the declaration line, matching each character case by case, that is using a lowercase m in my, uppercase F in first, and uppercase N in number, with no spaces between, and you can see we got the value 5 printed as the output. So now, let's explore what it really means for a variable's content to be variable. In the line of code we called the declaration statement, we've assigned our integer variable, named my first number, a value of 5. Another way to state this is that we've initialized our variable to 5. This is its beginning value. You can only initialize a variable once, either in the declaration statement, or if not there, meaning you optionally chose not to set the variable at that time, then in a statement made later in the code, but a value must be assigned to the variable before you can use it in a print statement or in an arithmetic operation, for example. We'll walk through this shortly. For now, let's reassign the value in our variable, changing its value from 5 to 10. This is a very similar statement to the declaration statement, except we don't specify the data type in the subsequent statement. We'll double check to make sure to finish the line of code with a semicolon and execute that line of code by hitting enter. My first number equals 10, semicolon. Next, we'll call the same line of code we called previously, printing out the value in the variable named my first number. Here, the value is printed out as 10. To reiterate, the only thing we changed was the value in our variable. The variable name and the data type remained the same, meaning the storage area in memory is still allocated to hold the integer value we specified it would hold, and my first number is still the mechanism we'll use to set and get that value in memory. In this case, we set the value in that memory, changing it from 5 to 10. Let's, just for fun, change the value again. Here's your challenge. Change the value of our existing variable from 10 to 1000 and print the new value out using the system.out.print method as we've done previously. Pause the video here and try that out using JShell. When you've completed the task or need a little help, start the video again. Welcome back. I hope you got that to work, but let's walk through the exercise together because there are some things I'd like to clarify as we go through it. My first number equals 1000, semicolon. Next, we'll call the same line of code we called previously, printing out the value in the variable named my first number. You could have also just typed the previous statement in rather than using the up arrow key. In either case, the value printed should be 1000. Now, let's use a JShell command which will list all the statements we've executed and assign values to in JShell. /list. This JShell command lists all the Java statements you've executed in JShell. If you have followed along, your output should look as follows. We've executed 7 statements. The first statement is the declaration statement, which created and initialized our int variable named my first number. In the fourth statement, we assigned a different value, 10, to the variable my first number, and on the sixth statement we executed, we changed our existing variable, my first number, to the value of 1000. But maybe you tried saving yourself a bit of typing and you scrolled up to the first line in history, the original declaration statement, which started with int and changed that value 5 to 1000. And again, to print it out. And your result was the same, the value of 1000 gets printed. There's one important difference, however, that I want to point out. The statement you scrolled up to and changed, which included the data type, was actually a redeclaration of the variable, my first number. JShell lets you do it, but a Java compiler and any integrated develop environment wouldn't allow it. It may not quite make sense yet, but it's important to note that once you declare a variable, you cannot redeclare it in a normal Java code block, even if you're redeclaring it with the exact same data type. Let's just review that statement I just made. By declaring a variable again, we are effectively redeclaring a variable, and in normal Java programming, that would not be allowed and would throw an error. Due to its interactive nature, JShell holds our hand and allows the redeclaration to occur without throwing an error. For now, just follow along, knowing that redeclaring a variable for a second or subsequent time is not allowed, and later in the course, when we switch to a full editor, you'll see what happens when we try and do that. Note that we can assign a value to a variable multiple times in Java, but it's the declaration, which includes the data type, that cannot normally be done a second time for the same variable. In our statements up to this point, the expression, defined on the right side of the equals sign, has been a simple literal value, either a string or a numeric literal. But the expression to the right of the equals sign can be a lot more complex. In the examples we just reviewed, we used a literal integer value of the number 5, and then you saw us we changed it to the number 10, and then 1000, but now let's look at something a bit more interesting. Let's add an expression that is the sum of two numbers, as I'll do here. My first number equals 10 plus 5, semicolon. I can state what I'm doing here as setting the value in my existing integer variable name, my first number, to the sum of the numbers 10 and 5. You can see I've added an operator by using the plus sign before the number 5, so it's 10 plus 5. I'll explain operators shortly. So let's hit enter to execute that now. And we've now got the value 15 output on the screen. And if we were to re-execute the print statement, we get the same output, 15. I'm not going to do that now, but you're welcome to if you'd like. Java has looked at the expression to the right of the equals sign and figured out that it's a mathematical expression, and it's basically calculated that to be 10 plus 5, which equals 15. And sure enough, we got that value assigned to our my first number variable, as we can see in the JShell output. We can get a lot more complex. Let's do that just before we finish the video. My first number equals opening parentheses 10 plus 5 closing parentheses plus opening parentheses 2 times 10 closing parentheses semicolon. That should give us 35. 10 plus 5, that's 15, plus 2 times 10. The 2 times 10 is 20. That's 15 plus 20, giving us the final value of 35. Let's execute that by hitting enter. And sure enough, we get the value 35 showing. So you saw that I introduced an operator there. In fact, we've got a couple of operators there. We've got the plus operator and the multiplication operator showing. Java operators, or just operators, perform an operation, hence the term, on a variable value. Addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication are 4 common ones that I feel sure you're familiar with, but there are lots more operators, and you'll be seeing those as we go through the course. By the way, if you want to get a downloadable list of all these slides, navigate to the last section of the course and look for a lecture called Bonus Lecture and Information. Alright, so let's end the video here, and in the next one, we'll figure out how to use other variables in expressions. See you in the next video.